the faith that we can have in our justice system, the faith that we can have in the operations of the judiciary on criminal matters, rather, is at a critically low point right now. And then you add to it, how is justice served by this woman spending 60 days in prison exactly? She's obviously already been through quite an ordeal. She's older. She's obviously fighting breast cancer, you pointed out. I would tell everybody to make note of the fact that they hold these individuals from January 6th in solitary confinement, which is only supposed to happen if someone is an extreme flight risk or if someone is a danger to society. There are judges' opinions that you can read about nonviolent January 6 offenders being held in solitary, in special segregation in the D.C. prison system because of the threat the judge feels from another insurrection happening, okay? Those are judges who have lost their minds, who watch way too much MSNBC, who think NPR is unbiased, and who think that Joe Biden is actually of sound mind.
One of the stories that we've been talking about off and on for months is soft on crime policies and the cost that then entails for so many people living in so many different communities across America. When you allow violent criminals back out on the streets to commit more crimes, the victims continue to stack up. And then conversely, when you treat relatively minor crimes as if they are incredibly significant in nature, there is a hypocrisy there. There is also this idea, which a lot of prosecutors have tried to sell, that January 6th was the most dangerous thing that's ever happened in the history of American life. And we have talked a great deal, including last week with Julie Kelly, who's been doing fantastic work to try to ensure that 80 different defendants who are still being held in Washington, D.C. jails are going to get the best possible defense that they can. And I have donated my own money to try and get them the best lawyers that they can because of situations like these. So there was an interview with one of these defendants. She is a 69-year-old grandma, drug counselor, and cancer patient. She is being sent to prison, I believe this week, for walking inside the U.S. Capitol. She is a former drug and alcohol counselor who's been sober for 42 years, helped thousands of addicts find sobriety, worked with so many people struggling with drug and alcohol addiction. She is a 69-year-old grandma, a cancer patient. She is going to prison for 60 days for walking into the U.S. Capitol on January 6th and taking video there. Trespassing, a misdemeanor, was the charge. They want to send a message that she has committed an intolerable act effectively and deserves all of this punishment as a result. Buck, I've heard hardly anyone talk about this woman at all. Again, 69 years old, a grandma, battling breast cancer right now, no criminal background, spent her entire life virtually working as a substance abuse counselor, and she was arrested for trespassing on January 6th. I just want to get all the facts. I'm reading from the Gateway Pundit here. She pled guilty to the charges with assurances from her attorney that based on her age, cancer diagnosis, and complete lack of criminal history, anything short of probation was incredibly unlikely to happen. Judge Lambert sentenced this woman to 60 days in federal prison to begin serving on July 12th. And here's the judge's ruling. She was upset, even though this woman was contrite during sentencing, that another case that somebody had not been contrite. And so he decided effectively to throw the book at her, 60 days in prison.
So what
Buck,
you
your
have
thoughts?
is a few things that all come together here that are deeply distressing for anybody who cares about the rule of law. One is that because of the consolidation of not just the regime physically in D.C., with the institutions, the agencies that are in and around the Washington, D.C. metro area, but also the political concentration there. Jury pools, for example. You're going to have no justice done on political matters that are handled by the justice system in Washington, D.C. Anything that's highly politicized is going to be skewed. There needs to be much more of an effort to move jury trial, to move these trials. But of course, a judge can deny those things, right? And this becomes part of the problem. But we should understand that you cannot, if you are in any way affiliated with Donald Trump and accused of a crime in Washington, D.C., you are not going to get equal justice under the law. In fact, you're going to get the opposite of the benefit of the doubt, right? You're going to get the doubt only. No reasonable doubt given to you. And that's one part of it, Clay. The other thing is you have a Democrat mentality, and this is where you start to get a pretty bleak view, I think, of our future if this continues, where they've moved the highest goal of law enforcement away from protecting the physical safety and the property of the American people to protecting them from bad ideas. That, meaning anything that is prescribed by the regime, anything that the Biden White House or that the left, that the apparatus of the Democrat Party views as a threatening thought or belief, they will unleash the full force and fury of the federal government in whatever way that they can on you. But they're always looking for ways to try to let people who commit violent crimes, let people who commit property crime after property crime, stealing from people. I'm not talking about just like graffiti or something somewhere, although that's bad too. Stealing from people, grand larceny, car theft, these things. They're always saying, well, we don't want to use too much state force on that. So the way to summarize what I'm saying here, Clay, would be they will send 24 men with long guns and flak vests to go arrest Roger Stone in his silk pajamas at 5 o'clock in the morning for a nonviolent crime. They'll send this grandmother to prison for 60 days, but they don't want to go too harshly on someone who beats an old man to death outside of a subway or outside of a bus stop in Portland, Oregon, who has about a dozen serious arrests in his background. Why is that?
Buck, it's this is legitimately infuriating. There is video of her arriving to start serving her 60-day sentence. We need to play this video, I think, of her speaking at some point during the rest of the show, and I'll send it to our crew because I hadn't seen this yet. It was just sent to me. Where are we? Think about months of BLM protests all over this country. How many of those actual rioters are doing 60 days in prison for what they caused? Billions of dollars in property damage. Here we have an actual grandma, 69 years old, breast cancer patient right now, being sent to FCI Dublin prison, evidently, in California. She's from Boise, Idaho, by the way. Where are we when for trespass? Buck, I mean, this is absolutely indefensible.
So they used cell phone geolocation data and facial recognition technology to track down people who were at the January 6th riot all over the country. They could use those and should have used those very same tools, of course, for every BLM rioter who lit a building on fire, who threw a rock at a cop, that is felony assault on a police officer, who shined lasers in the eyes of federal officers. This happened specifically in Portland, trying to blind them. I mean, if someone said, hey, I'm trying to blind you, and I had a firearm on me, I'd probably use it. I don't want to go blind. I don't want someone blinding me intentionally as an act of, insurrection or whatever they want to call it, an act of outrage on the streets, pushing back against the system. this is something where you see that we do not have equal justice. We do not have a justice system that is free of the most destructive kinds of politicization. And this all comes, Clay, after the DOJ, the FBI, the CIA showed that at the top levels they were willing to be weaponized against a sitting administration. Right. So we're the faith that we can have in our justice system, the faith that we can have in the operations of the judiciary on criminal matters, rather, is at a critically low point right now. And then you add to it, how is justice served by this woman spending 60 days in prison exactly? She's obviously already been through quite an ordeal. She's older. She's obviously fighting breast cancer. You pointed out. I would tell everybody to make note of the fact that they hold these individuals from January 6th in solitary confinement, which is only supposed to happen if someone is an extreme flight risk or if someone is a danger to society. There are judges' opinions that you can read about nonviolent January 6 offenders being held in solitary, in special segregation in the D.C. prison system because of the threat the judge feels from another insurrection happening, okay? Those are judges who have lost their minds, who watch way too much MSNBC, who think NPR is unbiased, and who think that Joe Biden is actually of sound mind.
It is absolutely infuriating how little attention, and it's times like these, Buck, when I'm very happy that we have such a large forum to be able to share stories like these. Our crew has a couple of clips that she put out as she was being driven to prison. We're going to play those for you when we come back because I think it's important to do so. And also, I want to give you this address. She's in jail for the next 60 days. Her name is Pamela Hemphill. She's Federal Correctional Institution, 5701 8th Street, Dublin, California, 94568. And I'll tweet this out eventually, but 5701 8th Street, Dublin, California, 94568, Pamela Hemphill. They're asking for people to send just letters and messages to her to help her get through the 60 days. So some of you may want to do that as well. Her family is asking that you send her messages to help her get through these 60 days that she's going to have to spend in prison for walking into the Capitol on January 6th.
Peter Strzok, no time in prison. James Comey, no time in prison. The former CIA director, Brennan, no time in prison. These people tried a coup from within inside the United States government against a sitting president. Didn't spend a day in prison. Didn't even face charges, folks. Joe Biden, he has a son named Hunter Biden, Clay. How many days in prison has Hunter Biden? Hunter Biden, who makes crack and hooker videos like it's his last day on the earth every day, it seems. How many days has he spent in prison?
No, you're exactly right. How many times has he even had charges brought against him? None. Most of these guys, leave aside the prison, how many of them have even had charges brought against them for anything? God forbid you walk into the Capitol on January 6th. But we'll play you a couple of these cuts of this 69-year-old grandmother being taken into prison for 60 days because she walked into the United States Capitol.
She spends 2 months in prison. Hunter Biden makes videos flouting the law like the crazy degenerate he is, who's selling access to the highest office of the United States government to make sure there's enough cash in the bank for his crack habit and his prostitution habit. He spends no time in prison, everybody. They can't think of a federal charge against Hunter Biden, apparently. They can't think of anything because we live in a just society. We live in a society where the justice system is to be taken as unpolitical, non-political, apolitical. I don't think so. Clay had mentioned this, that this woman, Ms. Hemphill, is on the way to spending 2 months in prison for the nonviolent crime of being in the Capitol, which even AOC says some people were waved into by the Capitol Hill police, which seems pretty weird, doesn't it? Here is her talking about what she faces.
Yes, we have arrived at the Dublin Federal Prison for Women. I'm here with Pam Hemphill. Mom, how do you feel? You're here.
Scared to death. I'm frightened. but I know God's with me. I just got to take it 5 minutes at a time, one day at a time.
Mom, what do you have to say to the American people as your last words before you go in?
Just keep your faith that no matter what's going on in your life, God's with us. No matter what's happening to us, it's going to be okay in our lives. We just lean on God and trust.
Do what's right.
Do what's right and help make this country better again, and support all those that are right now locked up in the January 6 people that are not getting any trials. God bless you all.
Clay, a lib judge thought that woman should be locked up for standing in the wrong place.
I just want everybody out there listening to that woman right now to think about where we are as a country, that we are putting a 69-year-old grandma with breast cancer in jail for 60 days for walking inside of the United States Capitol and trespassing on January 6th. And I want all of you to think to yourselves, is this making America any safer at all? It's shameful. It's an embarrassment. Joe Biden himself should be ashamed of this.